Before we begin, take a deep breath and settle in. What you're about to hear are stories of real people, real mysteries, and moments that still have no answers. Here on ChapmanCrime, we explore the strange, the tragic, and the unexplained. From haunting disappearances and unsolved murders to stories that seem to defy logic. Each case you'll hear tonight is told with respect to the victims and their families. Some of these stories will stay with you long after the video ends, not because they're frightening, but because they remind us how fragile the truth can be. If you enjoy exploring mysteries that still echo through time, you're in the right place. This is ChapmanCrime, where every story hides a secret. In May 2006, 32-year-old Ray Rivera disappeared from his Baltimore home without warning. 6 days later, his body was found in a disused conference room at the Belvedere Hotel, one of the city's oldest and most mysterious landmarks. The details of his death remain as confusing today as they were when investigators first arrived. Ray was a writer, filmmaker, and newly married to his wife, Allison. The couple had recently moved from Los Angeles to Baltimore so Ray could work for his close friend, Porter Stansberry's financial publishing company. He was ambitious and creative, a man who dreamed of making movies and writing stories about heroes and truth. But in the days before he vanished, something seemed to be troubling him. On May 16th, Allison was away on a business trip when she tried to call Ray and got no answer. Later that night, he received a phone call that made him rush out of the house. He grabbed his keys, left the lights on, and didn't take his phone. He was never seen alive again. 6 days later, his body was discovered at the Belvedere Hotel after staff noticed a hole in the roof of a lower conference room. The fall had been from 6 floors up, but nothing about the scene added up. His glasses and phone were found nearby with barely a scratch. The hole in the roof didn't line up with any accessible ledges, and the jump trajectory was physically improbable. Police ruled his death a probable suicide, but his family and friends were certain otherwise. The clues deepened the mystery. In Ray's office, investigators found a strange note taped to the back of his computer. It referenced Freemasonry, secret societies, and a list of names, including people he admired and movie characters. The note was written in small type and cryptic language, ending with the words, "Whom virtue unites, death will not separate." Police dismissed it as personal musings, but to many it looked like a code. His friends said Ray had recently seemed anxious, convinced he was being followed. Some suspected he'd uncovered sensitive information through his work in finance. Others believed his death had been staged to look like suicide, the details intentionally left to confuse. The Belvedere itself added to the legend, a century-old building with a history of secrets, old tunnels, and hidden service paths that could explain how Ray's body ended up where it did. But even that theory never solved the impossible angle of the fall. Years later, the case resurfaced in the Netflix series Unsolved Mysteries, reigniting public interest. Yet no new evidence has emerged. Ray Rivera's story is the kind of mystery that sits between logic and intuition, a man who may have known something too great to speak aloud. A fall that physics can't explain, a note that feels like a warning, and a question that still echoes through Baltimore's quiet nights. What really happened at the Belvedere Hotel? On the morning of August 4th, 1981, 20-year-old Cynthia Anderson arrived at the Toledo law office where she worked as a secretary. She unlocked the doors, turned on the lights, and began her usual routine. By noon, she was gone, leaving behind her car, her purse, and an unfinished lunch. The office was locked from the outside. There were no signs of struggle. Cynthia Anderson had vanished in the middle of an ordinary day. Cindy was known as quiet, responsible, and deeply religious. She had a close relationship with her parents and was saving money for Bible college. But in the months leading up to her disappearance, she had grown increasingly nervous. She told her family she'd been receiving strange phone calls, heavy breathing, then silence. She also said she'd been having nightmares that someone was trying to harm her. Her coworkers noticed her growing fear. She began keeping the office door locked during the day and had even installed a buzzer system to let people in. The morning she disappeared, she had typed a Bible verse on her office typewriter. "You are loved, you are chosen." No one knows if it was meant as encouragement or a farewell. When police began their investigation, they found no sign of forced entry or struggle. Her car was still parked outside and her purse sat on her desk. There was one odd detail, a romance novel open on her workspace to a page describing an abduction at knife point. In the weeks that followed, bizarre clues emerged. Someone called her law firm repeatedly, refusing to identify themselves. A local billboard appeared with a cryptic message, "I still love you, Cindy." Signed, G. No one ever came forward to claim responsibility. At the same time, police were investigating a major drug trafficking case in the area, one connected to the very law firm where Cindy worked. Some believed she may have overheard something dangerous or stumbled across evidence. Others thought she'd been targeted by someone who had been stalking her for months. Despite dozens of leads, nothing concrete ever surfaced. No trace of Cynthia Anderson has ever been found. No remains, no confirmed sightings, no closure. Her family believes she may have been abducted shortly after opening the office, perhaps by someone she knew. Her disappearance is one of those rare cases that feels both ordinary and impossible. A young woman, a locked office, and a vanishing act that left not a single clue behind. To this day, her desk remains a ghost of that morning, a half-eaten lunch, a verse about love, and silence where a voice once was. On the evening of September 16, 2009, 24-year-old Mitris Richardson was arrested outside a restaurant in Malibu, California, for failing to pay a dinner bill. She was polite but confused, acting strangely according to staff. Officers brought her to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station around midnight. She was released a few hours later, alone without her phone, wallet, or car. By morning, she was gone. Mitris was bright, artistic, and full of ambition. She had recently graduated from California State University with a degree in psychology and was planning to pursue graduate studies. Friends said she'd been behaving oddly in the days before her arrest, speaking about messages in music, numbers, and the universe. Her family believed she was experiencing a mental health crisis and hoped she'd be kept safe overnight. Instead, the sheriff's department released her at 12:28 a.m. in total darkness on a remote road surrounded by rugged hills and canyons. She had no transportation, no phone, and no place to go. The closest neighborhood was several miles away. Around 6:30 a.m., residents in the area of Monte Nido called 911 after spotting a young woman matching Mitris's description, wandering through their backyard. When deputies arrived, she was gone. That was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. For months, search teams combed the steep terrain, canyons, and creeks near the area. Nothing was found. Her family pleaded with the department for answers, demanding to know why she had been released without support or supervision. Then, in August 2010, nearly a year later, hikers discovered partial remains deep in Malibu Canyon, less than 2 miles from where she was last seen. The area had already been searched multiple times. Her clothing was scattered and her body was in a state that made it impossible to determine a cause of death. The sheriff's department ruled the case accidental, suggesting she may have fallen or succumbed to the elements. But her family never accepted that explanation. They questioned how a healthy young woman could disappear just hours after being in police custody, and why evidence, including photos of the recovery site, was allegedly mishandled or withheld. To this day, theories range from mental health crisis to foul play, with many believing Mitris may have met someone in the canyon that night, someone who took advantage of her vulnerable state. Others think she became disoriented and lost, a tragic accident worsened by neglect. What's certain is that Mitris Richardson should never have been alone on that road in the first place. Her story remains a painful reminder of how easily a person can vanish, not because of fate, but because of the choices of others. A young woman full of promise released into the dark and never seen alive again. In the early hours of September 7, 2015, a man named Henry McCabe left a voicemail that still chills everyone who hears it. The call was made to his wife's phone, and what it captured would become one of the most haunting pieces of evidence in any missing person case. Henry was 32 years old, a father of 2, and a respected auditor living in Mounds View, Minnesota. That night, he went out with friends to a club in nearby Spring Lake Park. According to witnesses, he had been drinking but was in good spirits. Around 2 a.m., his friends said they dropped him off at a gas station so he could buy food before heading home. But he never made it home. At 2:28 a.m., Henry's wife, Karen, received a call from his phone. She was in California visiting family and missed it at first, but the voicemail it left lasted over 2 minutes. In it, Henry can be heard screaming, crying, and gasping as though in pain. Strange growls and clicking sounds echo in the background. At one point, a calm male voice seems to say, "Stop it." Then the line goes dead. Karen immediately called Henry's friends, but none of them claimed to know where he was. Police began searching the area where his phone last pinged, a small park near Rice Creek surrounded by dense trees and water. Days turned into weeks with no sign of him. At first, investigators treated it as a possible accident, but the voicemail didn't fit that explanation, nor did the shifting stories from those he'd been with. One friend admitted taking Henry's wallet earlier that night to keep it safe. Another said he'd dropped Henry off miles from the gas station he originally mentioned. For 2 months, there were no clues. Then in November, a kayaker discovered Henry's body in Rush Lake, about 6 miles from where his phone had last pinged. The medical examiner ruled his death accidental drowning. There were no signs of trauma or foul play, but no explanation for how he ended up there, or for the terrifying voicemail that captured what sounded like his final moments. To this day, the recording remains one of the most disturbing and debated pieces of audio in modern true crime. Some believe it captured an attack or abduction. Others think Henry, confused and disoriented, wandered into the woods in distress. Experts who analyzed the tape said the sounds were genuine, not edited, but beyond that, no one can explain what really happened. Henry McCabe's death remains both tragic and inexplicable. A man calling out into the night, a voice that says, "Stop it," and a silence that never gave his family peace. Whatever happened in those final moments, only the sound of that call remains. A desperate echo from the dark Minnesota woods. In the early hours of June 3, 2011, 20-year-old Indiana University student Lauren Spearer vanished after a night out with friends in downtown Bloomington. She was last seen walking barefoot through a quiet neighborhood just before 4:30 a.m. And then, she disappeared without a trace. Lauren was bright, outgoing, and loved by everyone who knew her. Originally from New York, she had come to Bloomington to study fashion merchandising. That night, she joined friends at a popular local bar called Kilroy's. Surveillance footage later showed her leaving the bar around 2:30 a.m., barefoot and carrying her shoes, appearing intoxicated. From there, she visited several friends' apartments nearby, each time seeming a little more unsteady. By 4 a.m., Lauren was at the apartment of a male friend resting on his couch. He said she wanted to go home, and though others offered to walk her, she insisted she was fine. Cameras later caught her walking away alone along College Avenue, her last confirmed sighting. When she failed to return to her apartment, her friends reported her missing the next day. At first, investigators hoped she had wandered off and would turn up safe. But as days passed, her disappearance began to look more sinister. Her phone and keys were found in a friend's apartment, her shoes left behind at the bar. Police quickly noted inconsistencies in the stories of those who saw her last. Some refused polygraph tests, others hired lawyers. Search efforts covered miles of wooded areas, quarries, and waterways surrounding Bloomington. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search. The FBI became involved, analyzing phone records, surveillance footage, and digital data, but found nothing that led to Lauren. Rumors spread through the university community. Some believe she may have overdosed at a friend's apartment and that her body was hidden to avoid charges. Others suspected abduction by a stranger. None of the theories could be proven. Lauren's parents moved to Bloomington to help with the search and have remained tireless advocates for missing persons ever since. They believe their daughter's case is not about mystery men, but about silence. Someone knows what happened that night, but no one has spoken. Over a decade later, no trace of Lauren Spearer has ever been found. Her disappearance has become one of the most well-known college mysteries in America, a story of friendship, secrecy, and the fragile line between safety and tragedy. A young woman walked home barefoot beneath the streetlights of a college town. Somewhere in that short walk between friends and home, she vanished, and the truth even now remains hidden in the dark. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Every view, like, and comment helps these stories reach more people and keeps the memory of those still missing or unsolved alive. If you'd like to help the channel grow, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me where in the world you're listening from and which story stayed with you most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the truth is often stranger than we think. This is Chapman Crime.